The Fisherman's Wish. The village of Gora sat nestled between rolling hills and the vast, winding river Omogba, a sacred body of water that had provided for the people for generations. Fishermen cast their nets every morning, returning at sunset with baskets heavy with fish. Women pounded millet by the fireside, singing songs of their ancestors. Children played near the riverbanks, their laughter ringing across the valley like the voices of spirits. Among the many villagers was Jabari, a fisherman known for his strong hands and unwavering patience. He was a man of quiet strength, respected for his skill in the water and his kindness toward others. But despite his many blessings, Jabari carried a heavy sadness. For 10 years, he and his wife Nia had longed for a child. A home without laughter. Nia was a woman of grace and warmth, her presence as comforting as the shade of a great baobab tree. But sorrow had taken root in her heart. In Kora, a home without children was considered incomplete. Women whispered behind their hands when she passed. Some pitied her, others cast suspicious glances, wondering if she had offended the spirits. Jabari saw the pain in his wife's eyes each time a friend announced a pregnancy, each time children ran to greet their fathers at the end of the day. One evening, as they sat outside their small thatched roof home, watching the moonlight dance on the river's surface, Nia sighed. "Will we ever hear the laughter of our own child in this house?" she asked, her voice heavy with longing. Jabari squeezed her hand. "The spirits have their time, Nia. But I swear to you, I will do whatever it takes to bring you happiness." A faithful catch. The next morning, Jabari rose before dawn, gathering his fishing net and wooden basket. He walked the familiar path to the Omogba River, his feet bare against the damp earth. The air was thick with the scent of morning dew. The water shimmered, reflecting the soft golds and purples of the rising sun. Jabari pushed his canoe into the water and paddled deep into the river, where the fish were plentiful and fat. He cast his net over and over, collecting his usual catch, tilapia, catfish, and river bream. But just as he was about to head home, his net suddenly pulled taut. Something heavy was trapped inside. Jabari frowned, gripping the net with all his strength as he hauled it into the boat. And then he saw it. A massive golden fish, unlike anything he had ever seen before. Its scales shimmered like molten sunlight, glistening in hues of amber and copper. Its eyes glowed with an unnatural light, filled with an intelligence that sent a shiver down Jabari's spine. "What manner of fish is this?" he muttered, his heart pounding. The creature thrashed wildly, sending water splashing into the boat. Jabari grabbed it firmly, preparing to place it in his basket. But before he could, "Let me go, fisherman," a voice whispered. Jabari's blood ran cold. He froze, his grip loosening. The fish had spoken. The fish's offer. Jabari stared at the fish in stunned silence. His first instinct was to drop it and run for the shore, to tell the village elders what he had witnessed. But something held him there, an unseen force keeping him rooted to the spot. "Do not fear," the fish continued, its voice smooth as rippling water. "I am no ordinary creature. I am one of the guardians of this river, a messenger of the river spirit. You have shown patience and respect to these waters, and so I bring you an offer." Jabari's heart thundered. "An offer," he whispered. The fish's golden scales gleamed brighter. "Release me, and your greatest wish shall be granted. Your wife will bear you not one, but 2 children of great destiny." Jabari's breath caught in his throat. A child. 2 children. Was this a blessing from the gods? Or a trick from the spirits? His mother's old warnings echoed in his head: "Do not make bargains with things you do not understand." "And if I refuse?" he asked, his voice cautious. The fish's eyes darkened, the water around the boat growing eerily still. "Then your nets will never again fill with fish. Your name will be forgotten. Your home will remain empty, and your wife's heart will break beyond repair." Jabari's fingers tightened around the fish, his mind racing. Could he risk denying such a gift? He thought of Nia, of her tears, of her whispered prayers to the ancestors each night. "Very well," he said finally. With careful hands, he lifted the fish and lowered it back into the river. The moment its body touched the water, a ripple of golden light spread across the surface. The fish turned to face him one last time. Do not question their nature. And do not defy the rules of the river spirit. Then, in a flash of light and water, it was gone. A prophetic dream. Jabari sat in his canoe, his hands trembling. Had he truly spoken to a river guardian? Or had he imagined it all? Shaken, he paddled back to shore and hurried home to tell Nia everything. She listened with wide, disbelieving eyes, her hands clasped over her heart. "Do you truly believe this?" she whispered. Jabari nodded solemnly. "We will see soon enough." That night, as the village slept beneath a sky littered with stars, Nia was visited by a strange and vivid dream. She stood beside the Omogba River, its waters no longer calm, but raging with power. A massive serpent rose from the depths, its scales the same glowing gold as the fish Jabari had described. Its eyes bore into her, deep and knowing. Then, in a voice that was both ancient and eternal, it spoke. "They are not yours alone. They belong to the water. Honor the river, or it will take back what it has given." Nia gasped awake, drenched in sweat, the echo of the serpent's words still ringing in her ears. She turned to wake Jabari. But before she could, she felt it. A warmth. A flutter deep within her belly. A life growing inside her. Tears filled her eyes. "Jabari," she whispered. "It is happening." The birth of the twins and the forbidden ceremony. The months passed, and just as the golden fish had foretold, Nia's belly swelled with life. The village of Gora watched in awe and curiosity, whispering among themselves. "A blessing from the river," some murmured. "A trick of the spirits," others warned. But for Jabari and Nia, it was a miracle. The day finally arrived on a stormy night when the river's tide was higher than usual. The sky rumbled with distant thunder, and a warm breeze carried the scent of rain. Inside their hut, Nia lay on a straw mat, sweat glistening on her dark skin as the village midwives worked to deliver her children. The twins are born. The labor was long and difficult, but when the first cry filled the air, Nia wept with relief. A baby girl. Then another cry. A second girl. Twins. The midwives exchanged nervous glances, for in Korra, twins were considered a rare and mystical occurrence, a blessing or a curse, depending on the circumstances. Jabari knelt beside Nia, his eyes filled with joy and fear. He had expected one child but had been given two. "What shall we name them?" he whispered. Nia, exhausted but smiling, ran her fingers across their tiny faces and whispered. "Zalika and Naya." The moment the names left her lips, a strong gust of wind blew through the hut, rattling the windows and sending shivers through everyone present. The eldest midwife, Mama Osai, muttered a prayer of protection. But Baba Kanal, the village seer, had different words. "These are not ordinary children," he said, his voice heavy with foreboding. "Their souls are bound to the river spirit." A warning from the seer. Baba Kanal was old and wise, known for his visions that often came in riddles and warnings. He stood at the door, his staff pressed firmly into the ground. "The river has given, but it can also take," he told Jabari and Nia. "Do not question their nature. Do not anger the water." Jabari shuddered, remembering the golden fish's warning. But Nia, still cradling her daughters, refused to believe in ill omens. "These are our children. Nothing more, nothing less," she said firmly. The seer sighed. "Time will tell." Then, without another word, He turned and disappeared into the night. A village celebration, and a risky decision. The news of the twins' birth spread quickly, and soon the entire village gathered to celebrate. But the people of Korat demanded tradition, a naming ceremony for the newborns. Jabari hesitated. No, he whispered to Nia. We were warned not to question their nature. We cannot risk it. But Nia disagreed. What would the people think if we refuse? They will suspect something. They may even turn against us. Jabari clenched his jaw. He knew Nia was right. To refuse a naming ceremony would bring suspicion, and suspicion could lead to fear, gossip, and worse. Finally, he agreed. A decision that would change everything. The forbidden ceremony. The day of the ceremony arrived under a bright, golden sun. The entire village gathered, dressed in their finest garments, eager to witness the blessing of the twins. At the center of the village stood the sacred tree, where ceremonies had been performed for generations. Drummers played a rhythmic beat, and the chief priest, a tall man with piercing eyes, raised his hands to the heavens. These children are of the river, he declared. We offer them to the spirits for protection. One by one, the twins were lifted toward the sky, their tiny bodies bathed in the warm sunlight. And then, a gasp. The entire village fell silent. For a brief second, under the rays of the sun, their skin shimmered. Golden scales appeared. As quickly as they came, they were gone. But everyone had seen it. A murmur swept through the crowd. Did you see that? It was just a trick of the light. No, it was something else. The chief priest's hands trembled as he set the babies down. Nia's heart pounded. Jabari's breath caught in his throat. They had been exposed. But no one spoke further. The ceremony continued, though the villagers stole glances at the children with newfound unease. The spirits had marked them. And something, had noticed. A mother's terror. That night, as the village feasted and celebrated, Nia could not sleep. Jabari lay beside her, his arm draped over his eyes, exhausted from the day's events. But Nia felt uneasy. Something was wrong. A strange sound drifted through the hut. A sound she had never heard before. A soft hissing. Her blood ran cold. Slowly, she rose from the bed and tiptoed toward the baby's crib. What she saw made her scream. A massive serpent lay coiled around the twins. Its scales were golden, glowing faintly in the moonlight. Its eyes, deep and knowing, bore into hers. Nia's legs gave out beneath her. The twins slept peacefully, undisturbed by the creature's presence. She stumbled backward, knocking over a wooden stool. The serpent did not move. Tears blurred her vision as she turned and bolted out of the hut, her scream splitting the night air. The awakening. The village awoke to Nia's cries. Her neighbor, Amoni, rushed over and grabbed her by the shoulders. What is it? What's wrong? Nia could not speak. She pointed, trembling, toward the hut. Amoni ran inside. Moments passed. Then she returned, holding the babies. They were normal. Just two innocent children, blinking sleepily in the night air. Nia's breath caught. Had she imagined it? Had exhaustion and fear warped her mind? Nia, Amoni said gently, you are tired. The birth, the ceremony, it has taken a toll on you. Rest. Nia nodded numbly, taking the babies into her arms. But as she pressed them close to her chest, she could feel it. A strange warmth beneath their skin. Like something beneath the surface was waiting. Watching. And it was not done. Secrets in the shadows. The night after Nia's terrifying encounter with the serpent in the crib, she barely slept. The image haunted her, the golden coils wrapped protectively around her daughters, the knowing stare of its gleaming eyes. She had not imagined it. And yet, when Amoni and the other villagers had rushed inside, the twins had been perfectly normal, two innocent, sleeping infants. Had the river spirits played a trick on her mind? Or was she the only one who could see the truth? A husband's doubt. The next morning, Nia told Jabari what she had seen. He sat beside her, his brow furrowed in concern as she recounted the events, the hissing sound, the golden serpent, the way it vanished the moment someone else entered the hut. Jabari exhaled, rubbing a hand over his face. Nia, he said carefully. You have barely rested since the birth. You are exhausted. These things you are seeing, they are not real. Her stomach twisted. I know what I saw, Jabari. And yet no one else saw it, he countered. She clenched her fist. You believe the fish gave us a blessing. You believe the dream I had. But now, when I see proof of something beyond our world, you doubt me. Jabari sighed. I believe in what I can touch, Nia. The twins are here, in our arms. They are safe. That is all that matters. Nia said nothing, but deep in her heart, she knew. Jabari was wrong. There was something different about their daughters. And it was only the beginning. The signs begin. The weeks passed, and while Jabari busied himself with fishing and village duties, Nia kept a watchful eye on Zalika and Naya. And then, she started noticing things. 1. The rain never bothered them. One afternoon, a storm rolled in over Thora. The rain hammered the rooftops, sending villagers scrambling for shelter. But the twins did not cry. Other babies in the village wailed and fussed, but Zalika and Naya simply blinked up at the sky, their tiny fingers reaching toward the falling drops. Nia watched them carefully. Their expressions were not confused or afraid. They looked at home. 2. They moved like shadows. As the twins grew, Nia noticed how eerily quiet they were. Most babies stumbled when learning to crawl. Zalika and Naya glided. Their movements were smooth, fluid, too fast, too effortless. One evening, Nia set them down in their crib and turned away for only a moment. When she looked back, they were across the room. Her breath caught. How did you? She whispered, stepping closer. The twins simply giggled, their eyes dark and knowing. 3. The light revealed their truth. One day, as the sun reached its highest peak, Nia was bathing the twins outside. The golden sunlight cascaded over their skin. And for a brief moment, she saw it. The shimmer of faint golden scales, vanishing as soon as the light shifted. Nia's heart pounded. They are not normal children, she whispered. But she still did not know what they truly were. And the answer would come sooner than she expected. The river's call. One evening, Nia woke to a strange noise. She turned to Jabari. He was still asleep, his deep breathing undisturbed. Slowly, she rose from the bed and followed the sound. It led her outside. Past the village huts. Past the trees. To the riverbank. And there, bathed in the moonlight, stood Zalika. Alone. Whispering. Nia's heart stopped. Zalika, she called out. Her daughter did not turn. She stood with her bare feet in the water, her tiny hands raised toward the rippling current, her lips moving in a language Nia did not recognize. But the river recognized it. The water responded, rising and calling toward Zalika's fingertips like a serpent obeying its master. Nia felt cold fear crawl up her spine. Zalika, she called again, louder this time. The little girl finally turned. Her eyes were not the soft brown of a child. They were deep gold, glowing in the dark. A mother's realization. Nia's breath shook. She ran to Zalika, scooping her up in her arms, holding her close. What were you doing, child? She whispered. Zalika blinked up at her, the golden light fading from her eyes. I was talking to the river. Nia swallowed. Why? The little girl hesitated, then whispered. Because it misses me. The seer's warning. The next morning, Nia went to see Baba Connor. She found the old seer outside his hut, grinding herbs in a stone bowl. He looked up as she approached, as if he had been expecting her. You have come with questions, he said. Nia nodded urgently. The twins. I have seen things. Things no mother should see. Their skin changes. Their eyes glow. The river listens to them, Baba Connor. What are they? The seer sighed and gestured for her to sit. Your daughters are bound to the river. But you already know this. I do not understand. Baba Connor's gaze darkened. The river spirit does not give life without a purpose, Nia. You were warned. Their souls are not yours alone. Nia's breath caught. Then what do I do? The seer leaned in, his voice low and firm. You must never let them forget who they truly are. Or what? The old man's eyes bore into hers. Or the spirits will reclaim them. The curse revealed. The years passed quickly, and Zalika and Nia grew into bright, mischievous children. They were inseparable, always seen together, whispering secrets only they understood. Despite Nia's warnings, they were drawn to the river like birds to the sky. No matter how many times she told them to stay away, she would always find them playing along the shore, their feet buried in the wet sand, their eyes fixed on the moving currents. Jabari, though wary, tried to ease his wife's fears. They are children, Nia. They love the water, just as all children do. But Nia knew better. The river did not just attract them. It called to them. And one day, the village would see the truth for themselves. Whispers in the village. The twins were different from the other children, and the villagers knew it. They moved too gracefully, too silently. They never cried, even when they scraped their knees or fell from trees. They never shivered in the cold or complained of heat in the sun. And sometimes, just sometimes, when the light hit them just right, their skin shimmered with golden scales. The people of Korra began to whisper. Those children are not of this world. They belong to the river. They are not meant to be among us. Nia heard them. She felt their stares, their unease, their fear. And in her heart, she knew the truth would not stay hidden forever. The children's cruelty. One afternoon, while Zalika and Nia were playing near the river, a group of village children approached them. Led by a boy named Tono, the children surrounded the twins with mocking grins. Look at the river, children, Tono sneered. Do you sleep in the water at night? Maybe they don't even have blood, another boy laughed. Maybe they have fish bones inside. The twins said nothing, but Zalika's hands tightened into fists. Then Tono stepped forward, his voice dripping with cruelty. My grandmother says your mother stole you from the water. That you are cursed. That one day, the river will come and take you back. Zalika's body tensed. Her breath quickened. Her skin tingled. Then, she hissed. A low, sharp, inhuman sound. And for the briefest moment, her pupils thinned into vertical slits, like those of a snake. The children screamed. They stumbled back, eyes wide with terror, before running back to the village, shouting. The river children are cursed. They are not human. The rumors spread. By the time Nia and Jabari heard the shouting, the rumors had already spread like wildfire. The villagers gathered in whispers. The twins are serpent spirits in disguise. They are not one of us. The river spirit has sent them as a test, or a punishment. Jabari, furious, confronted Tono's parents, demanding answers. Your children are liars, he spat. They taunt my daughters and twist their words. But the fear in the villagers' eyes told him everything he needed to know. They didn't want to believe the twins were innocent. They wanted to believe the rumors were true. Because if the twins were not like them, then they did not belong. And the village would never accept them. The seer's truth. That night, as Nia sat awake, racked with worry, there was a knock at the door. She opened it to find Baba Connor standing in the moonlight. I told you this day would come, he said softly. Nia let him inside, her heart heavy with dread. Jabari, still angry from the day's events, spoke first. The village is turning against them, he said. They say they are cursed. Baba Connor nodded gravely. They are not cursed, he said. They are simply not meant to be here. Nia's hands shook. What do you mean? The old man sighed. Zalika and Naya were never meant to live among humans. The room fell silent. What are you saying? Jabari whispered. Baba Connor placed his hands on the ledger of ancient writings he carried, flipping through centuries-old records. The river does not give without reason, he said. The twins are the daughters of the river Serpent Spirits, placed in human form as a test. A trial to see if they could exist in this world. Nia's stomach twisted. Then, what do we do? How do we protect them? Baba Connor's face darkened. There is only one way. Jabari and Nia leaned in, desperate for an answer. You must never acknowledge who they truly are, the seer said. Never let them hear their real names spoken in full. Never let them remember where they came from. Jabari's face hardened. And if they do? Baba Connor's voice was heavy with sorrow. Then the river will take them back. Nia felt as if the air had been stolen from her lungs. No, she whispered. If the twins learn who they really are, their souls will awaken to their true nature, Baba Connor continued. They will no longer be human. And the river will reclaim them. Nia covered her mouth, tears threatening to spill. Jabari clenched his fist. We won't let that happen, he said. You cannot stop destiny, Baba Connor murmured. Watch them carefully. And pray that the spirits do not decide to take what is theirs. A family's vow. After Baba Connor left, Jabari and Nia sat in silence, their minds heavy with what they had learned. Nia looked at her daughters, sleeping peacefully, unaware of the danger that loomed over them. What do we do now? She whispered. Jabari exhaled. We protect them. Nia shook her head. But how? Jabari's eyes darkened. From now on, we keep them away from the river. We teach them to be normal. We do whatever it takes to keep them from remembering. And if they do? Nia whispered, her voice shaking. Jabari turned away, his hands tightening into fists. Then we will have to let them go. Nia closed her eyes, a single tear slipping down her cheek. She vowed in that moment. She would never let that happen. The betrayal. For years, Jabari and Nia did everything in their power to hide the twins' true nature. They kept Zalika and Naya away from the river, discouraged them from speaking about their dreams, and forbade them from playing alone with other children. But secrets have a way of slipping through cracks. The village of Gora had not forgotten the strange whispers that surrounded the twins. The fear that had taken root years ago was beginning to grow into something dangerous. The drought comes. One summer, the rains did not come. The great Omogba River, once full and mighty, began to shrink, its waters receding like a wounded animal. The crops withered, the livestock weakened, and the wells ran dry. The villagers grew desperate. And when desperation takes hold, people begin to search for someone to blame. The chief priest decree. One evening, under a crimson sunset, the village gathered at the sacred tree. The chief priest, an elder with deep lines of wisdom and shadows of fear in his face, stood before them. "The river has turned against us," he proclaimed, his voice booming over the restless crowd. "We have angered the river spirit, and unless we make an offering, our land will die." The villagers muttered among themselves. What had they done to anger the spirits? What could they offer to appease them? A voice, sharp as a blade, cut through the crowd. "It is the twins," a woman hissed. All heads turned to Naima, a bitter woman who had always envied Nia's happiness. "Those girls are unnatural," she spat. "They were born from the river. Now the river wants them back." A hush fell over the villagers. And just like that, the seed of suspicion blossomed into certainty. The elders' judgment. The next day, the village elders summoned Jabari and Nia to a council meeting. The entire village gathered outside the elders' hut, their faces dark with accusation and fear. Jabari stood tall, his jaw clenched, while Nia held her daughters close. "Jabari," the eldest among them began, "the drought has come. The river has abandoned us. And now, we ask you, who are your daughters?" A murmur rippled through the crowd. Jabari's eyes darkened. "They are my children." His voice was firm. Nothing more, nothing less. The elders were not satisfied. "Then why do they not cry in the rain?" one of them demanded. "Why do they move like shadows? Why do their eyes glow like golden fire?" The questions pressed in, like waves crashing against a ship. But Jabari remained silent. Nia's heart pounded in her chest. She could feel the villagers' anger rising like an oncoming storm. And then, a voice rang out. "Tell us the truth, woman." Naima. Her eyes gleamed with triumph, knowing she had backed Nia into a corner. Nia's lips trembled. Her pulse roared in her ears. "They are just children," she whispered. "Our children." "Are they?" the chief priest asked. "Then speak their true names, and prove to us they are one of us." Nia's breath caught. She froze. She could feel Zalika and Naya clutching her hands, their fingers trembling. The silence stretched, suffocating. And then, "Zalika. Naya." She whispered their names. And the sky broke open. The storm awakens the river. A massive thunderclap shook the ground, rattling the very earth beneath them. The once dry Omogba River began to roar to life, its water swelling unnaturally, rising, twisting like the body of a great beast. The wind howled, and the sky darkened with storm clouds that had not been there moments ago. The villagers cried out in terror, some falling to their knees. And then, the twins began to change. The illusion of their human form melted away, revealing the truth that had always been hidden beneath their skin. Their bodies shimmered, their golden scales catching the moonlight. Their eyes turned into slits, glowing like liquid fire. A gasp swept through the crowd. And from the river, a voice boomed, deep, ancient, and powerful. They were never meant to stay. The river serpent had spoken. The twins' fate. The villagers scattered, their cries drowned out by the storm's fury. Jabari grabbed Nia, pulling her back as the river surged forward, creeping toward the shore like an unstoppable force. The twins stood motionless, transfixed by the call of the water. "No!" Nia screamed, running toward them. But the moment she reached out, a wave crashed down, ripping the twins from her grasp. They did not fight it. They did not scream. They simply let go. And the last thing Nia saw was their golden eyes watching her, before they disappeared beneath the waves. The storm stilled. The river returned to calm. And the twins were gone. Aftermath, a family's grief. The village stood in stunned silence, staring at the now quiet river. The fear in their hearts had been replaced by something else. Guilt. Regret. A mother's wail pierced the night, raw and broken. Nia fell to her knees, her hands clutching the empty space where her daughters had been. Jabari stood beside her, his face unreadable, his heart shattered. The elders, the villagers, even Naima, none of them spoke. The sacrifice had been made. But the land no longer felt victorious. It felt hollow. The river's curse. Days passed. The river remained full, the drought had ended, but something in Korra had changed forever. The people whispered. The river took back what was stolen. The twins were never ours. They belonged to the Serpent Spirit. But Nia and Jabari knew the truth. The river had not taken their daughters. It had called them home. And on certain nights, when the moon was full, Nia would stand at the river's edge, her heart aching. She would listen to the water lapping at the shore. And sometimes, just sometimes, she would hear whispers in the waves. A voice, soft and familiar, calling from the depths. Mother. They returned to the river. The world seemed to stand still as the twins stood at the river's edge, their golden eyes reflecting the moonlight. No longer were they the innocent girls of Korra, hidden behind human flesh. They were something more. Something ancient. Something eternal. Zalika and Naya turned their heads, looking back at the village for the last time. And then, they stepped forward. A mother's desperate plea. Nia's body trembled as she reached for her daughters, her cries drowned out by the roar of the rising river. Zalika. Naya. Please. Jabari fell to his knees beside her, his face pale with grief and disbelief. Don't go, he pleaded. You are our daughters. You belong here, with us. For the briefest moment, the twins hesitated. Their serpent-like eyes softened, flickering with something that resembled sorrow. Then, the river parted. And it rose. The river serpent's judgment. The waters churned violently, twisting into a towering spiral, and from within its depths, a form began to take shape. A massive serpent emerged, its golden scales gleaming like sunlight upon water. Its eyes, ancient and knowing, bore into Jabari's soul. The villagers gasped, many falling to the ground in fear. This was no ordinary creature. This was the river serpent spirit itself. And it had come to pass judgment. You broke the sacred rule, it hissed, its voice a low rumble that shook the very earth. Jabari's throat tightened. Please. The serpent's gaze burned into him. You were warned. You were given a gift. And yet, you chose to defy the will of the river. A gust of wind tore through the village, sending dust spiraling into the air. You tried to keep what was never yours to keep. Nia clutched her chest, her breath ragged. But your sacrifice was not in vain. The serpent turned its head, looking at Zalika and Naya, who stood perfectly still, awaiting their fate. Your daughters will not forget you, it declared. And one day, they may return, but not as they were. Jabari's heart wrenched. What does that mean? He demanded. Will we ever see them again? The serpent did not answer. Instead, it turned its gaze upon the twins. Come, children of the river. It is time. The twins nodded. And with that, they took their final steps into the water. The twins' departure. As soon as Zalika and Naya entered the river, their human forms melted away. The last remnants of their mortal existence faded, replaced by the shimmering golden coils of their true selves. They were no longer children. They were serpents, sleek and powerful, their bodies moving as fluidly as the water itself. The villagers watched in stunned silence as they glided through the river, their scales glowing like fire beneath the waves. And then, with one final glance at their mother and father, they disappeared. The river, once wild and violent, stilled. The wind ceased. The storm was over. And Zalika and Naya were gone. The village's silence. No one spoke. The villagers of Korra, who had once whispered and gossiped about the twins, now stood in solemn realization. They had tried to force them to be something they were not. They had tried to deny what could never be changed. And in doing so, they had lost something irreplaceable. The chief priest stepped forward, his voice trembling. Let no one disturb the river again. A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. From that night onward, the people of Korra vowed never to anger the river spirit again. They no longer fished in the forbidden waters. They no longer spoke ill of the past. And when they told the story of the serpent twins, it was not with fear, but with reverence. Years later, the river's secret. Time moved forward. The river thrived once more, its waters returning to their full strength, its fish plentiful and abundant. But the villagers of Korra knew they were being watched. For on certain nights, when the moon was full, two golden serpents could be seen swimming near the shore, their bodies weaving gracefully through the currents. Some claimed they were mere reflections of the stars. Others whispered that they were guardians, watching over the village from the depths below. But Nia knew the truth. And every night, without fail, she would stand at the river's edge. She would close her eyes. And she would whisper their names. Zalika. Naya. And sometimes, just sometimes, she swore she could hear them whisper back. Mother, the end.